I don't see anyone, but I am confident that the distinguished audience is capable to see me. The title of the subject that I'm going to touch upon is Turkey as a European State and Progress and Challenges. We may, of course, begin by asking the following question. Is Turkey a European state? Well, I will not try to sell, as we say in Turkey, a goose pretending that it's a nightingale. I would like to describe what Turkey is trying to do, and I will leave it to you to make your own judgment whether Turkey is a European state or not. Of course, everything depends upon the definitions. The way you define what is European will be also an answer to whether Turkey is a European state or not. In the history, there were several definitions for Europeanness. One of them was for a country to be regarded as European, it had to have waged a war to Turks. If a country did not wage a war to Turks, it was not eligible to be regarded as a European country. Well, if we take this definition, we may assume that Turkey is very much entitled to do so because every Turk is at war with every other Turk, so we can easily be regarded as being eligible to the European Union. These jokes put apart, history, if we take the history as a basis, Turkey contributed a lot to the shaping of the European history. In the past, there were part of Europe was part of the Ottoman Empire, and at present there are something like 13 states which had become in the past part of the Ottoman state. Secondly, many members of the European Union to make war, one Christian state against another Christian state, sought the alliance with the Ottoman Empire. So at that time they were considered European. If we look at the geography, again, the definitions of geography may vary from one person to another. For instance, Cyprus, if we take Europe as a geographic entity, Cyprus is further away than Turkey, but it has become a member of the European Union if you look at it from that standpoint. Again, regarding geography, part of Turkey is already in the European continent, and the population of this part of Turkey is something like 16 million inhabitants, because Istanbul being one of the most populated cities in Turkey, and there are other cities in the western part of Turkey as well. 16 million inhabitants means that it is more than the total inhabitants population of around 20 members of the European Union. There are only 7 European Union countries that have a population more than the European part of Turkey's population. These are, of course, what you take as a basis of your definition. We in Turkey, we are more inclined to regard European Union neither in historical terms nor in geographical terms, but we look at it as a union of values, universal values. Does Turkey embrace these universal values? We believe that Turkey embraces these values, and this is the reason why Turkish people aspires to join the European Union. Coming from a culture slightly different, which is Islamic culture, one has to bear in mind that Turkey is the only country in the Islamic world which has a secular system protected with constitutional provisions. And these constitutional provisions are unamendable part of the Turkish constitution. So it cannot be modified either. If we have these values, if we have these bases, then we have to discuss Turkey's Europeanness on this basis, perhaps. And when we look at other points, culture, of course, the basis of the European culture goes back to the Greek civilization. You may know that most of the Greek civilization flourished in what is Turkey today. Pythagoras was born in a town near Izmir, and when he went to Egypt and wanted to know how high the pyramids were, he developed his theorem, and this is how he found out. We know that there is a theorem, a correlation between three angles of a triangle. And Strabon, the cartographer and geographer of the antique period, was born in Amasya in Turkey. And there are a lot of other things which is the source of the Western culture, but which originates from the present Turkey, from Anatolia. You may also know that the Christianity was born in Middle East. It flourished in the present Turkey and spread to Europe from there. St. Paul was born in Tarsus near Adana in Turkey. So he preached in Izmir and Ephesus and Pergamon, and then went to the present European, to the countries that are at present members of the European Union. And when we think of the more recent period in the European history, Turkey is part of NATO since 1952, that's to say 57 years. And Turkey is the founding member of the Council of Europe, founding member of the OSCE, and now a negotiating country with the European Union. Well, in view of these elements, I will leave it to you whether Turkey can still be considered as a European country. Turkey is negotiating membership, or Turkey applied for the membership to the European Union in 1959. And in 1964, European Union signed an agreement with Turkey, an association agreement with the ultimate aim of becoming full member. And I will now skip all the other main dates that has passed in between. In 1999, Turkey was given the status of a candidate country to become full member of the European Union. And in the year 2002, it was agreed that Turkey, negotiations of full membership with Turkey will start as soon as Turkey reaches a certain level of criteria. And then in 2004, a decision was adopted by the European Council to start negotiations in the year 2005 in October. And when that date came, the negotiations started. So until that time, there was no question, or Turkey's Europeanness or Turkey's membership to the European Union was not questioned. It started afterward, and of course Turkey does not understand why such a change of position took place in certain European countries. At present, certain countries or leaders of these countries have started to make statements which puts into doubt Turkey's membership, but Turkey does not want to get entangled in this because Turkey's interlocutors are not individual countries, neither the political leaders in these countries. Turkey's interlocutor are the institutions of the European Union. And these institutions tell us that the negotiations at present are aimed at full membership, period. When we have this attitude from the institutional side of the European Union, then we have no other choice but to continue negotiations for the full membership. And when the date comes on whether after all chapters are negotiated and after it is ascertained that Turkey fulfills all criteria, at that time certain countries will submit Turkey's membership to their public opinion through referenda. Some countries will ratify Turkey's membership in their parliament, perhaps in certain cases in their government. And of course, at that time, Turkish people will also be consulted, and we do not know whether Turks at that time would still like to join European Union, whether the European Union will still continue to be an attractive union, and we do not know whether it's going to be a governable European Union with more than 35 members. For this reason, the present government in Turkey decided not to get entangled in the present position of certain countries, but try to look beyond the horizon and utilize this process of accession to the European Union to put more order to its interior. That's to say, to make Turkey a country with better democracy, more widespread fundamental rights and freedom, more transparent market economy, perhaps lesser corruption, and make the better standards for the nation. When we achieve this, perhaps it will be less relevant to discuss whether Turkey should join the European Union or not. So this is where we stand at present. Of course, what I said does not prevent that there is a disillusionment in the mind of the Turkish people because of these statements by certain politicians, and also because of some institutions of the European Union treat this question of Turkey's accession process. The disillusionment in Turkey, in Turkish public opinion, pushed the government to adopt a new strategy, perhaps, towards Turkey's accession process. Rather than trying to respond what the European Union asks from Turkey to do in order to move the negotiations ahead, Turkey has established its own roadmap to make Turkey's legislation 100% compliant with the European Union acquis communautaire. And this is a road plan that covers the period between 2007 and end of 2013, so 7 years period. And this roadmap is established according to Turkey's priorities and not the European Union priorities. One thing. Secondly, Turkey had neglected for a long period its immediate neighborhood, Middle East, Central Asia, Caucasus, because I'm sure that you will remember anyone who is more than 90 years old now in all Middle Eastern countries were born as Ottoman citizens. These are people who were born in Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Gulf countries, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, Egypt, Libya. So everyone who is older than 90 years old in these countries were born as Ottoman citizens, and the population of these countries are the descendants of these Ottoman citizens. So Turks have a moral duty to be in closer touch with these countries. Turkey had neglected at the turn of the last century its relations with these countries. Now Turkey thought that it would be better to return to these countries, but this time with another role. As you may remember, Turkey is a country which is known as a country of hard power, because in NATO, Turkey's army was the biggest army, the second biggest army after the United States. Turkey thought that it should also turn to the soft power in order to come back to these regions, both to Central Asia, Caucasus, and in the Middle East. This is what Turkey is trying to do. What is the soft power of Turkey? Turkey is now involved more in civilian activities, in technical assistance, and in the reconstruction activities in Palestine, in Afghanistan, and in Iraq, and also trying to use its knowledge of the region, having similar mentalities with the people of this region, to try to help these countries to overcome their problems with their neighbors. For instance, as we have done it in the case of mediating between or acting as message carrier between Syria and Israel. Now it is suspended because of the Gaza crisis, and we will see whether it could be resumed in the future. We have done similar things for Afghanistan and Pakistan, and we have brought together the presence of the two states in Istanbul on several occasions, and now we are trying to convene a meeting of friends of Afghanistan in Istanbul again. We have done similar things in Iraq. Since Iraq has become very unstable, Turkey has stepped in not only to protect its kinsmen, Turkmens in Iraq, but to act as a democracy-inspired country, to be equidistant to all elements of or segments of the Iraqi society, and encouraging them to adopt democratic rules and democratic ideas. And each time we invited delegations from Iraq, these delegations contained representatives of all segments of the Iraqi societies. This is how we reached the present level of cooperation with Iraq. We have now a strategic partnership with Iraq, and something like 12 ministers are meeting together under the chairmanship of their respective prime minister. We have developed similar mechanism with Syria, and if you remember, with Syria we were almost at war 9 or 10 years ago when Syria was hosting the leader of a terrorist group. From that point we came now to a point where we have strategic partnership with Syria, and we abolished visa for citizens of each country to visit their countries. While doing this, Turkey wants to perhaps put to the forefront or to surface certain advantages that may be useful for the European Union as well. First of all, Turkey is a negotiating country with the European Union. This is a status recognized by the Union, but which is also very important for the countries of the region. Secondly, Turkey is part and parcel of the Middle East because of the historical relations. Thirdly, Turkey is a major country of the Black Sea Basin, and Turkey is the initiator of an organization which is called Black Sea Economic Cooperation. Fourthly, Turkey has close cultural and ethnic ties with the countries of Central Asia, which is oil-rich and rich in natural gas. And then Turkey is a major player in the Islamic world because Turkey's sultans served as caliphs, that's to say the Pope of the Islamic world for more than 4 centuries. But there are 2 more characteristics of Turkey which is slightly more important than the others. One is the secular character of the Turkish state. The other is Turkey's role as an energy hub coming from the Middle East. On the secularism question, as I mentioned at the beginning, secularism is a constitutional order which has guarantees with the constitutional provisions, but it doesn't stay there. It is more than that. Turkish population has digested, internalized, and utilizing in their daily life these secular principles. I remember something like 30 or more years ago, a mayor in one provincial town issued a decree, municipal decree, saying that in the month of Ramadan, the restaurants will be kept closed in the daytime. A restaurant keeper stood up and said, I am a good Muslim, but in a secular country, I don't let these municipality people to decide on my behalf whether I will close my restaurant or not. And he went to the court to challenge this decision. He lost the case because it says somewhere in the Turkish legislation that opening and closing hours of the public places are regulated by the municipality. Then he went to the Constitutional Court to challenge this court decision, and he won the case. This is to explain that the secularism or secular principles of the state are not principles enshrined in the constitution and forgotten there. Turkish people are aware of it, know it, and use it, utilize it, and they also use the recourse procedure in order to obtain their right. This is as far as the secularism is concerned. We may talk more about it in case there are questions. I would like to say a few words also on this aspect of Turkey's as an energy hub. You may know that Caspian Sea basin plus Persian Gulf basin constitute 72% of the known oil and gas reserves of the world. 72%. This is east of Turkey and at the immediate neighborhood of Turkey. To the west of Turkey, European Union consumes 40% of oil and gas of the world. So Turkey is a natural bridge between the oil-rich basins of Caspian Sea and the Gulf on the one hand, and the consuming countries. And the most economical way to pump these oil and gas goes through Turkey, both from the sea routes and also from the land routes. When you have such advantages, together with all the other advantages that I enumerated at the beginning, that's to say, being part of the Islamic world and being part of the Middle East and having secular system and all the others, Turkey will, of course, utilize and reap the advantages of being a country like this. And it will face the risks of being in such a geography and would like to cope with all the advantages and risks. Now, we may ask ourselves whether Turkey is drifting away by turning that much to the Middle East. Well, I do not know, of course, what will be the outcome in the forthcoming years, especially concerning the relations between Turkey and the European Union. But Turkey has no intention to give up its Western orientation, or that aspiration of embracing universal values. Is it going to become a member of the European Union? It is something else. It is something that has to be separated. Becoming member of the European Union is one thing. Embracing universal values is something else. Turkey will utilize this period of this process of negotiations with the European Union and will put more order to its interior if it becomes, if all the negotiations all the chapters are negotiated successfully, and it will be decided at that time. To conclude, I would like to underline once more that Turkey will continue to negotiate in good faith with the European Union with the ultimate goal of full membership. Any other status other than the full membership is not acceptable for Turkey. Whether Turkey should be admitted to the European Union or not is not a subject that has to be discussed today. It has to be discussed at the date when Turkey comes to the threshold of the European Union. That Turkey which will reach the threshold will not be Turkey's to date, it will be different Turkey. The European Union that Turkey will join will not be today's European Union, it will be the European Union of that date. And at that time, the international landscape will be different. The power balance in the Middle East may be different. We do not know what will become uranium enrichment program. We do not know what Iraq is going to become. We don't know which direction will take Israel-Arab conflict and the Palestinian Israeli conflict. We do not know what role Turkey could assume in order to contribute to the preservation of the interest of the European Union in these regions. I would like to mention here one statement by President Chirac before the summit of the year 2004. He is on the record to say the following, I quote, "If the European Union will be content to remain as a free trade area, we could do it without Turkey. But if the European Union is going to assume global responsibilities, we cannot do it without Turkey." So it will be decided by the citizens of the European Union which role the European Union is going to assume in the future. With this quotation, I will now stop here and wait for your questions.